This issue was one of 3 that I was most looking forward to reading when I initially started researching this event. While Ashema was an important character in Heroes Reborn: The Return, she was also a very empty character. The idea behind her character was that interacting with Franklin Richards taught Ashema the sanctity of life. Now, seeing the inherent value in the lives of those living upon the Reborn Earth, Ashema took up the task of maintaining the pocket dimension that the Reborn Earth exists in. Her celestial form then entered into a sleep state on the moon, and that's where we left her. But for a character so important, Ashema really had little to no personality. She was honestly more of a plot point than a character. So giving her a one-shot to shine in sounds like a great idea. I definitely have some questions that I want answered, like, if Ashema is powering this dimension already, can she still influence the Reborn Earth? And the cover shows her celestial form on one half of it, and her human form on the other, so does her human body come back? And if it does, how? I mean, the Celestials are believed to be creatures of pure energy, housed in the massive humanoid shapes that we see, so her powers could honestly be anything. They just need to be defined. That means that author Chris Claremont has a lot to explain and establish here, and I'm eager to see him do it. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.15, More Human Than Human. Heroes Reborn: Ashema, written by Chris Claremont, penciled by Michael Ryan, inked by Don Hillsman, and colored by Jason Wright, opens with Ashema. A late teens to late 20s type, her age made hard to pin down thanks to Michael Ryan's artwork. She's thin and muscular, but she isn't terribly buff. She has dark brown skin, long black hair, and she wears a brown trench coat over her torso. She has on a pair of shorts, but they're pretty short, and wears no shoes. This makes running over the rain-soaked roofs of New York City a challenging feat. Claremont narrates as she runs, explaining that she's experiencing sensations that she's never felt before. She runs in terror, pain erupting from her feet as she steps onto sharp pebbles, and her chest is tight with the cold air as she gasps for breath. Although she runs, her gait is uneven, having only learned to actually rely on her legs recently. Ashema was once a member of the 4th host of the Celestials, but no longer. The narration continues, explaining the deal with the Celestials as universal scientists, pruning the tree of evolution as they traveled the stars. A sudden wave of water washes over the roof, taking Ashema down. An Atlan warrior rides the next wave onto the roof, ready to prune Ashema. She tries to use her powers to reduce him to ash, but her eyes just flash impotently. Her powers are gone. She's as good as human. The Atlan presses his advantage, backhanding her. That's another first for Ashema, being physically struck. He then tries to tackle her, but Ashema instinctively kicks out, surprising even herself. While her cosmic powers are lost to her in this form, she can manifest them as pure physical strength. As such, Ashema is super strong, but she's no warrior. The Atlan draws a knife, holds it high, and suddenly cries out. Ashema might be human, but she isn't going to give up her new life so easily. The panel then shows us 2 black silhouettes, one of the Atlan and one of Ashema, with a huge scream overlaid on top of it, and it's attributed to neither. I honestly cannot tell what's happening here. Maybe Ashema headbutted the Atlan? Or maybe she grabbed his stabbing hand and then forced him to stab himself? Maybe she does something else entirely. I can't tell. All I know is that I turn the page, and the Atlan falls back, dead. The building underneath Ashema begins to do the same, crumbling under the assault of the waves. Using her celestial enhanced strength, Ashema leaps to a nearby fire escape. This allows her to climb to the next building's roof. She huddles against the low roof wall, shivering, but from more than the cold. She holds up the Atlan's knife, and it's covered in blood. Ashema remembers the feeling of killing him. She remembers the way the light faded from his eyes, and it makes her horrified. But why? As a Celestial, Ashema toyed with entire civilizations, with whole planets. How can one being's death unnerve her so? A male face forms in the stormy sky above, framed by some kind of helmet. This being says that such is the nature of things, referring to Ashema as his little sister. As the humans say, 1 death is a tragedy, 1 million a statistic. Ashema is shocked to recognize the face of the apostate. He cannot be here, though, she exclaims. He was imprisoned for all of eternity. The apostate smiles. Evidently not. Look about this world, now his playground, and see his good works. More importantly, Ashema can now count herself amongst his new toys. Ashema pulls her coat closer about her neck. If the apostate is free, then they're all doomed. Not just this Earth either, but the whole cosmos. She looks around as the apostate vanishes, and her sight is drawn to the Baxter building, shining bright through the rain. Perhaps there she can find some form of help. Her attention now held by the building, Ashema doesn't see the inky shadow that moves across the rooftop. It shoots out dark tendrils, engulfing Ashema. The shadow calls itself Divinity, and says that its nature is to speed the living along to their transition to the divine. It is very cheerful, as it says this too, clearly confident in its purpose, or just totally deranged. It also says all of this stuff out loud, meaning that it can somehow talk. A plasma spear smacks into its being, allowing Lancer to tell it that it is her job to stop it. Divinity fully engulfs Ashema and then transforms its body into a large, muscular, armored warrior, and then the pair fight. Lancer manifests plasma along her fingertips, creating, essentially, plasma claws, but as she slashes at Divinity, the wounds just close back up. She attacks its arm next, slicing one of them clean off. Driven by the pain, Divinity uses an I-beam to swat Lancer aside. She swings her hands, launching multiple spears through the creature before returning the I-beam to it. Divinity congratulates Lancer on how well she fought, and then it melts away. Lancer demands that it return the woman, but Divinity says that it's too late. The prey is gone, so too shall its predator leave. Divinity is called elsewhere, so it departs. It oozes into the cracks of the roof and is gone. Okay, we just had a lot happen. Despite her celestial form sleeping on the moon, Ashema does appear to have a body on Earth. I like that moving physically is new to her. Ashema previously floated or teleported around, so actually using her legs is a new act. But she also seems entirely new to this particular existence, indicating that there is a time gap between Heroes Reborn: The Return and this issue. Lancer has mentioned previously that months have passed since the heroes left, which is fine, but why didn't Ashema experience those months? Narration indicates that she was getting the lay of the land in New York City, as if the flooding of it was news to her. Why isn't she aware of what happened? And if this body of hers is brand new, then why was it created now and not at any point earlier than this? Claremont's overly formal dialogue works well for Ashema in general, as she was previously a celestial scientist, so she's used to observing, gathering information, and then acting. The Atlan attack is a throwaway action scene, establishing Ashema's basic power set, meaning her super strength, and her new life-valuing personality, while also presenting us with a little bit of action. This is pretty economical storytelling, although the artwork is confusing over the Atlan's death, and that kind of throws off the rhythm of things. The Apostate is a new character. I have no idea who he is or what he's doing here. The very fact that he refers to Ashema as little sister would indicate that he is a Celestial himself. An apostate, by the way, is a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle, so he's some kind of rogue or outcast from the rest of the Celestials. This minor reveal also tells us who Doom is ultimately up against, while still leaving that for the Doctor to find out himself. The Divinity creature is also new, sorta. But it's an introduction that's a Claremont cliché for sure. When Divinity attacks Ashema, it happily introduces itself and then immediately explains its motivation. I remember the Marauders doing this back in Uncanny X-Men. I think I remember some of the Neo doing this back during the Revolution-era X-books too. It's meant to be a contrast, a deadly killer being polite, even friendly to their prey, which should then unnerve us. But at this point, it's fairly uninteresting to me, and it really clashes with Divinity's appearance in Doomsday. Divinity was the shadows that attacked the Atlan and Shield warriors, and there was no polite greeting then. There was nothing but death and shadows. That confrontation, when Doom fought those possessed warriors, felt epic, dramatic, and like it had some weight to it. This moment, in contrast, feels cheaper and empty, just totally conflicting with the somber, bitter tone that Doomsday had established for us. Admittedly, this is a different comic, so its tone can be something totally different from the last, but most of this opening matches Doomsday so far. Very heavy-handed, very somber, very low-key. Except for this bit with Divinity, and that throws me off. Divinity does imply that it works for someone, which I'm guessing is the apostate, so that's also no information to us. I'm not sure if Divinity teleported Ashema somewhere else, or what, though. It seems just as confused as Lancer is when Ashema just is gone. Hopefully, reading more will clear this up. We also have another coloring error in this issue. As showed in Doomsday, the Baxter Building is the only building in New York City that has working lights. Ashema specifically looks to it because it is lit up, thinking that she might find allies or solutions there. But the artwork just shows the building as being dark. There are no lights at all. Come on, coloring teams, you can do better than this! Lancer returns to the Baxter Building and reports on her encounter to Doom. She's upset that she couldn't save the woman, losing this round to death. Doom tells her not to worry. There was no woman there. She was just a psychic projection, an illusion, if you will, and when Divinity tried to assimilate her, the projector dispelled the illusion, letting that body fade. That is why she just disappeared. Lancer is relieved and confused by this. How does he know all that? Doom then reveals that the nanites that he used to activate her powers also make her body an information-gathering sensor that is linked to Doom's armor. All that she experiences, he has access to. She steps right into his face. What gives him the right to do that, without asking her, without even telling her that he had done it? Because the world needs them both, and it needs them united, working towards its salvation. Individually, neither of them can fix this, but together, they'll be unstoppable. This answer actually seems to calm Samantha, although she insists that he should have told her out of respect for her. She has earned his gratitude, the doctor replies. Not yet his respect. Before we move on, I want to note this censor thing, because Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four has a similar advantage on his teammates, where their costumes collect data for him to analyze later. Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, has railed against this throughout Claremont's run, but push has not yet come to shove over the issue. But Claremont is going to continue to explore how similar Reed and Doom are throughout the rest of this run, and that starts here with this shared tactic. The pair then use some kind of craft to travel underneath the waves and visit Dorma, the new queen of Atlantis. She's a gorgeous blue-skinned woman with long ponytailed brown hair, a half cape, some video game armor, meaning that it protects her shoulders but nothing else, and some scaled decorations. Doom proposes an alliance against whatever force threatens their world, and Dorma, ultimately, agrees, although she does it kind of brusquely. Lancer, who is standing by a pair of Atlan guards, listens to them gossip in their native tongues, surprised by this. Doom and Lancer return to the Baxter Building and then go over what happened in the meeting. Lancer explains that she understood the Atlans because of her link to Doom, so he has now demonstrated how the link benefits her as well. He then asks her assessment of the meeting, and she relays what she heard. Dorma seems to like power both militarily and over men. She'll let Doom take the lead for now, then either betray him when it best suits her, or just seduce him into her service, whichever works best. Not that Lancer thinks that'll work. Just as Dorma took Doom's measure, he took hers, and he'll be ready for whatever move she makes. Doom is pleased by her conclusions. They match his own, plus, by speaking so freely, Samantha has proven her honor. She could have lied in order to manipulate Doom, but she did not. Let everyone assume that Lancer is just Doom's bodyguard, when she's actually much more. The pair then go over their next move. Doom has identified 2 more powers that they should ally with. One is called the Technarchs, Technarx, and another is a sect of mystics in what used to be San Francisco. But Doom's computers may have located the woman that Lancer encountered earlier. Retrieving her takes priority, and so they leave for the lands of the Kiwazi. The Kiwazi are an indigenous peoples group in the Marvel Universe, their reservation located in the American Southwest. They are most famous as the tribe of Wyatt Wingfoot, a longtime friend and ally of the Fantastic Four. In the Reborn comics, Wingfoot was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who had been captured and impersonated by Skrulls. He escaped captivity, warned the Thing and Human Torch about the aliens, and then joined them on the trip to Latveria for their big showdown between the Fantastic Four, the Black Panther, the Silver Surfer, Dr. Doom, and the Super Skrull. This was all covered in roughly issues 4 to 7 of Fantastic Four Reborn, or episode 1.2 of this very podcast, and Wingfoot hasn't been seen since that happened. Doom and Lancer fly to the area in their craft, skirting what Samantha calls the Gamma Zone. Doom says that they're both protected by his technology, so no fears there. He's more concerned about an attack from S.H.I.E.L.D., which should have happened about 15 minutes ago, and oh, there they are. A 5-man squad of jet-packing cyborgs suddenly tear through the air, opening fire on our heroes. Lancer asks Doom if he wants to fight them or fly the aircraft while she fights, and he answers, neither. Finding the woman's exact location will take all of his attention and sensors. He suddenly turns invisible, or maybe teleports, and leaves Lancer to handle both. Which is great, because a huge multi-storied warrior stands in the path of the craft. This is Tomazuma, guardian of the sacred lands of the Kiwazi. All who trespass here will die. Tomazuma reaches out with one hand and blasts the S.H.I.E.L.D. cyborgs out of the sky, leaving just Lancer in her craft. So she smashes it into Tomazuma's face. Yeah, this is a weird turn for this comic. Doom then teleports into, I don't know, Doom just suddenly is inside of a large temple of stone. Statues of Celestials line the wall, each one of them as big as a skyscraper. 12 of them line the walls, while one lays on or inside of a sarcophagus in the center of the room. The remains of one final statue rest at the sarcophagus's head, a pile of rubble. As Doom takes in the room, Divinity's inky form squeezes up through the floor. It approaches and then tries to engulf Doom. Outside, Lancer talks about what she's doing the entire time that she's doing it. What about show don't tell? Just let it be an action sequence. So what is she doing? She's fighting Tomazuma. Turns out she jumped off of the aircraft before it blew up, landing on Tomazuma's shoulder. Doing so revealed that Tomazuma was metal. It wasn't a supersized person, it's a supersized construct. Lancer then just starts to wail on it with her plasma spears, tearing it apart piece by piece. This reveals Tomazuma to actually be a robot. Lancer blows its head off, but the robot still moves, so she then dives inside of it and she just starts hacking at it some more. Divinity, meanwhile, seeks to assimilate Doom. He tries to force the ooze off of his person with his force field, but Divinity isn't fully pushed off. Some small portion of it manages to connect with Doom, and in doing so, they connect intelligences. Through divinity, Doom connects with Ashema's mind as well, although only for a brief moment. They then replay the basic narrative of the Reborn saga, again adding in Ashema-based specifics, like this tomb was meant to be Ashema's resting place as she kept the Reborn Earth a-spinnin'. But then the renegade celestial, known as the Dreaming Celestial, aka the Apostate, asserted himself and he just started messing things up. Ashema has begun to fight back, hence her avatar at the start of this issue, but things are looking pretty bleak overall. As Doom mentally wrestles with divinity, Tomazuma accidentally punches through the roof of the temple. Lancer then frees Doom from divinity next, not that he needed help like an a-hole. He then catches divinity in an energy cube of ultra-dense molecular bonds and shifting frequencies, which should keep it caged. Just say an energy cage. This is a comic book, man. I would buy it if you just said an energy cage. We're imprisoning a living murderous pile of goo on a planet created by a child's imagination and powered by a sleeping space god that is being destroyed by another sleeping space god. I don't need things to be scientifically accurate at this point, is all I'm saying. Energy cage. It's fine. Lancer then pulls Wyatt Wingfoot out of Tomazuma and asks if Doom is curious how he got in there, but Doom doesn't give a shit. No swearing! He's much more interested in helping Ashema, back in her human body, out of somewhere, off-panel, and asks if she's alright. Ashema glares at him in response. She is human and mortal. He cannot possibly understand how not alright she is right now. Plus, the Reborn Earth's existence is the key that the Apostate needs to escape his prison and thus threaten all of existence. This, to coin a phrase, blows chunks. But Doom says not to worry, he's got this, and blah 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 blah. We end the issue with Doom saying that the Apostate shall face his doom because Doom is contractually obligated to finish any issue that features him with the word Doom. So this entire issue was a huge waste of time. There's two main ways to look at this one-shot. The first is as a standalone comic book that is titled Ashema, and it should explore her character, or her adventures, or her role in our ongoing narrative. The second way to examine it is as the second part of this Heroes Reborn event, moving our main narrative forward. And it fails to satisfy on both accounts. As a standalone Ashema story, this does practically nothing. Claremont does at least explain how Ashema's human form is back, and he gives us some rules for how that body works, and he gives us the tiniest grain of a personality. Like Samantha last issue, Ashema is powerful but bitter, angry that her sacrifice to save this world has not only put it in danger, but cost her greatly as well. It was one thing to give up being a celestial space god in order to save a planet. It's another thing entirely to give up being a celestial space god and unleash a deadly threat on all of existence. I loved her jab at Doom when he asks her how she is. That is an interesting dynamic, especially since we've got Ashema paired with Doom and Lancer. Doom is a baseline human. The only power he inherently has is his mind. But Doom doesn't allow his humanity to hold him back either. His armor protects him, which he built completely. It can act as a weapon in multiple functions. It can gather information for him to use to his advantage. And he has studied the mystic arts as well. Doom is a human, sure, but he is no mere human. Similarly, Lancer might be human, but she fought off the Atlans and saved Doom before she had superpowers. For these two, their humanity isn't a crutch. It's a motivating factor. Thus, pairing Ashema with them, someone who looks upon being just human as a problem, should create some interesting drama and help kind of teach her about the human condition. But instead, Ashema spends the majority of this issue off-panel, and we get the adventures of Doom and Lancer. Watch as they face the threat of Tomazuma. This plays into the issue's second failing. Now, yes, this one-shot does move our narrative forward, revealing our main villain and threat, the Apostate, aka the Dreaming Celestial. We still don't know much about him, other than that the Celestials feared him enough to imprison him, and that Ashema fears him now, but that's fine. We can work with that. That threat is big and vague and dangerous enough, and Doom has to figure out how to stop it, and then turn things to his advantage because he's Dr. Doom, and that's kind of what he does. So we get to see Doom ally with Dorma, we see him plan to ally with other powers, and this one-shot does do a good job of creating interesting new locations and ideas for us to explore. We now know that the Technarchs exist, even if we don't know what that is. We know that San Francisco was lifted up onto a mountain plateau by the mystics who lived there. We know that there's a Gamma Zone. We know that S.H.I.E.L.D. is using cyborgs. That stuff is all interesting, and it is distinct to this Earth. I dig all of that stuff. I honestly do. But we don't explore any of those ideas. Instead, we rescue Ashema from a celestial tomb. Why was she in a tomb on Earth when we last saw her on the moon in Heroes Reborn: The Return? Why is there a celestial tomb on Earth anyways, much less one buried in the Kiwazi's mountains? Lancer's dialogue would indicate that Wyatt Wingfoot was put inside of Tomazuma to protect these lands. But why would someone do that? Was he put there to protect the tomb specifically, or was that just a side benefit of protecting the Kiwazi? We know that Wyatt was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent before, and that S.H.I.E.L.D. is turning people into cyborgs, so maybe the implication here is that S.H.I.E.L.D. put Wyatt into Tomazuma to keep people from disturbing Ashema, and thus potentially endangering the world? We don't know! Claremont doesn't even care to address it. Doom literally blows off Lancer's concerns. He's like, I don't give a crap, we've got more important things to do, and he's right, but then why would you bring all of this up? This isn't like an occurrence that was happening on its own and we stumbled across it coincidentally. Claremont wrote this. He planned it to be like this. But if that is the case, why? He could have just made Tomazuma a programmed robot and not include Wyatt at all. Or, I don't know, just skipped that whole nonsense. Because here's the thing. Most of this issue doesn't need to be. Claremont could have opened this issue up normally like he did, and Lancer goes to save Ashema from Divinity. But instead of having Ashema disappear when threatened, she's just saved. Lancer would have then brought Ashema to Doom, they would have learned about the apostate and the threat that he poses, the three of them could have allied with Dorma, and then maybe visited another one of those parties that Doom was interested in, or maybe both of them. We could have ended this issue ready to face the apostate in Claremont's final issue, but no, we waste time fighting cyborgs and Native American battlesuits and Divinity again, and then end pretty much where we began, with Doom confident that he and his allies will stop this threat and save the world despite having no idea how they're going to do it. I'm fine with Doom having a plan that he's just not letting the others in on, even us as an audience. That is a very Doom thing to do. But this issue should at least make me feel like Doom got another piece of the puzzle that he needs to accomplish that plan. It didn't, and this rushed ending frustrates me even more. Coming off of the well-executed high that was Doomsday, Ashema's one-shot is really a letdown for me. That's especially a shame because it's drawn by Michael Ryan, who I think is a fantastic penciler. His characters are drawn well, Doom's face and armor are meticulously detailed, the pages flow well, and they're all readable. He even does a nice, energy motif when the Heroes Reborn flashback/recap moment happens, indicating that it is happening somewhere not in the physical world. The coloring isn't the greatest here, everything is very flat, but the issue looks good overall. There is a digital rain effect at the start of the issue when Ashema is on the run, and it just kind of occurred to me that it doesn't look nearly as good as the digital rain in Superman 172. Man, the Houriers just killed the colors on that issue. For now, though, that ends our focus on Doom, Lancer, and Ashema. There are 5 more issues in this event for us to cover, and this is where they start to get weird. When the heroes returned to the 616 Earth at the end of Heroes Reborn: The Return, it was only the heroes who returned, not the supervillains that they had faced. In our next one-shot, titled Masters of Evil, the Black Knight explores the seedy underbelly of the Reborn Earth in his bid to curry favor with its new savior. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.16, Getting What You Deserve. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.